giving this presentation from home. There's a storm going outside. So I hope I don't get disconnected, but if I get disconnected, I would be back in 30 seconds. Okay, so just bear with me on that. Okay, so a little bit about myself. I've been kind of working in industry for over 18 years now, and worked with companies like Putney Computers, Global Logic, and now I have been running my own big data consulting startup for more than 5 years now, and working with global clients in European region as well as in the US region. And I primarily work on the data engineering side of the things to kind of enable the decision products for large global corporations. And most of the clients that I've worked in have been in the digital media, healthcare, and financial domain, even though we do some work with civilian government as well. Okay, so that's a bit about me. And with that, I would jump into the topic of interest. And again, let's try to make it as much interactive as possible. I don't have access to chat, so Vishal, it would be helpful if you can let me know any questions which are coming in so that I can take those up as they come in.
Sure.
Okay. So, so the topic is data engineering for scalable analytics. And let's first define what the scale is in the data analytics project. And very simply, two things which come to our mind is first, amount of data that we have, the quantum of data or the volume. And the second thing that quickly comes to mind if you're working on the data science side of the thing is how many number of variables are we working on? How would I deploy my model for, say, large amount of data? And what should be the pipelines I should be using, or what should be the product I should be using for deploying that, whether it should be cloud or whether it should be a public cloud, private cloud. So all those things kind of come into our mind. But what else? And that's what something I would like to kind of do that together. Some inputs from any one of you on what kind of scalability problems have you kind of seen in your scenarios. So let's kind of fill up some values in here. And Vishal, please let me know as the inputs are coming in.
Sure. So guys, we are waiting for your inputs as Ashutosh has asked for. Please respond here.
What does comes to your mind when you think about the scale?
I'm not getting any response here, surprisingly. So probably people are naive here, so probably you can go ahead.
That's fine. Okay, so let me then define what's my take on the scalability is. Okay, so this is what I think is my perspective on scale when you're working on any big data and analytics project. And both the things kind of go complementary hand in hand. You can't kind of do what basically analytics without having the data framework about it is. So the first thing is of course, the volume, velocity, variety, unstructured complexity is kind of in play. The number of variables, the kind of algorithms you want to kind of deploy, and if you're working in the deep learning scenario, what kind of neural networks you're working on, what kind of CPU power you need on, whether it could be horizontally scalable or not. So all those things are given. But what more than that? I think that is something that each one of us can comprehend. But what more than that? So another thing is the veracity of data itself, which is the master data management. Think about global organization having 100 plus data sources, starting from real-time social media feeds, starting from the legacy content that they have maybe sitting in mainframes, the data warehouses that they have built over a period of decades in, say, Oracle or SQL Server, or right. So there's so many data sources, and they have all their operational transactional data out there. So master data management becomes very important, and that is something that is very important on the engineering side of the things, because until you get the right set of data, which is not kind of corrupt in some sense, you would not be able to kind of test your algorithms correctly, which you are building on the right hand side. Then the government regulations and compliance with that, on the engineering side, you would have to also think about whether the data is secure or not. With GDPR kind of compliances, you will have to think about that as well as you are scaling your models. Then the second thing is how agile we need to be. Now, you had 110 data sources, you kind of developed a data hub, then you kind of feeded the data from the data hub into the downstream system, which basically was deploying models, you were training your models, you were kind of getting your outputs correctly, but suddenly 5 new data sources came in, and the accuracy of the model could change based on that. And are you even able to kind of add those data sources, how quickly you are able to do that with your engineering infrastructure becomes very important, right? So if you don't have that, you won't be able to quickly add more variables to your training model, and you won't be able to kind of do the real-time data from the connected devices, because the data could come in really, really very fast. Hey, I'm hearing some background noise. If you guys can hear me, that would be really helpful. Or if you have any questions, feel free to bring them up. Okay, then the next thing is the cloud neutrality, which means from the agile perspective, if you deploy your models on the AWS, tomorrow if your client wants to move them to Azure or GCP, can you do that? Okay, and that's an important aspect when you're kind of working with. So DevOps knowledge becomes very important. Cloud neutrality becomes very important when you're choosing the product that you're working with. Then another thing that is important is, can you ensure data privacy at scale? And that again is very important with all the kind of compliances that you need to do, and how granular your security is, whether it is at the data level, whether it is at the disk level, right? Can you secure your logs? Can you secure your models, right? And so on. And of course, as I mentioned before, the amount of computing power and storage to do the job on the distributed architecture, commodity hardware, cloud environment, that's kind of a given when you start thinking about the scale. So how do you solve the scale problem? Again, let's take about a minute. If with these scalability definition and problems in mind, how have you solved scalability problems in your analytical projects, or if you're working on the data engineering side, what have you used? Any tools, any strategies, any framework that you would like to talk about? So I'll give you about a minute to kind of give in your inputs, and then I'll basically try to complete from my side of things. And again, taking help from Vishal here if any inputs come in.
None
So one
here
is
as
a,
of now.
I'm sorry.
None coming this side. So people
I,
please respond. This will be a interactive exercise, so probably your guesses are good and you will be able to give your inputs here.
right. Yeah, the first one that I've already mentioned is scale out versus scale up. Traditional data warehouses used to use more specialized hardware. Today, you kind of work on the horizontal scalable hardware and the architectures. What else?
I think I think you continue.
Okay, so we have quite audience today.
Surprising it.
That's okay. That's okay. So let me show you how I like to solve this problem. And for that, I've basically developed my own framework, DTD framework, couple of I basically use in consulting situations. And this basically has three axes. It would be more better if I had a 3D view of that, but for now, let's kind of look at that. So you have a data preparedness index. If you see the x-axis, that's like a data preparedness index, y-axis, which is a technology preparedness index. And then if you see the third axis, z-axis, that's like a decision preparedness index. And what do we have here? So the first thing that you start when you start talking about the analytics project, you first need to kind of define your business goal and the ROI that you're looking on that. Then the second thing would be, do you have the right amount of data which you need, or do you need to still collect it? How many data sources, formats can you acquire that data easily? Is it secure to acquire that data? Would you be running into any compliances issue and so on? And then the third thing is the technology backbone, which is basically on the horizontal scalability side. You have Hadoop. Hadoop is kind of getting more commoditized today. A lot of products now have that layer already kind of built in for you. So on top of that, there are a lot of other tools for BI, and then Spark is gaining a lot of prominence, and then you have a lot of messaging and kind of data integration tools like Kafka and NiFi coming into the picture. And then you have your decision tools. So from the language usage perspective, Python, R, TensorFlows, right, deep learning algorithms, and everything in that kind of bucket goes there. And along with that, you need to present those results back. So you need to have your visualization layer in place. So classic issues that I have seen while working on the projects is something that I would like to show you, and then I think after a couple of slides, I'll open it for questions if there are any. So while setting the first thing, right, the first thing
So
was the business
Ashutosh,
strategy itself, right? Yes, please.
Ashutosh. So since
Yes, please.
people are quite here, I thought I will throw out some poll if we can get some response so that we'll know what is the level of their understanding as of today. So can we do that, Ashutosh?
Yeah, let's do that once we have reached. Let me just complete the slides,
Sure.
and then let's do the poll on whatever.
Okay.
Okay.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah. Great. Yeah. So the classic problem is you have basically solved the problem of data availability. You have the right technologies, licenses available, and you have the right team, but you haven't really defined your business use case. So that's something that you don't want to really get into. And as Vishal said, because we have a quite do a poll later on, so let me just run through a little bit on the slides and then we can go to those as well. Okay, so basically, you need sponsor a champion. You need a clear definition of a business use case before even proceeding onto any big data analytical project. And remember that this is not a one-time implementation. A lot of these projects get incremental implementation. You kind of choose to keep measuring your ROI so that you can scale it step by step. Then are you using the right technology? That's one of the major challenges that I've seen on most of these projects. I think working on your laptop or even in a 2 or 3 node cluster, developing a model and testing it out, maybe with 100K to 1 million records, is pretty easy. You can do that on the laptop. You might be very happy with your models there. But then when you kind of the rubber hit the road, and when you start talking about TBs of data coming in, how do you kind of start doing those? How does your model perform in those scenarios? Okay, first of all, from data integration perspective, have you seen the right tools? So a lot of tools which are there in the market, Talent, MuleSoft, NiFi is something that one or more of these in place or homegrown one is something that is definitely needed. Have you looked at the right database, right? So traditionally we have been using RDBMSs, and they are not very good at solving this problem of scale and the kind of data sets that we are working in. Schema agnostic is becoming a norm. Instead of ETL, ELT is becoming a norm. So ETL was extract, transform, and then load. Define the schema upfront and then load the data. But ELT is becoming a norm today, where you extract, then load the data, and then do a transformation as per the data requirements. Right, so that's very important. Then the challenge number two is, of course, the right skill, where a lot of you are kind of already working with Vishal and on that, and basically getting a lot of help some of the technologies that you need to. Right, so of course, the existing professionals are difficult to find and costly. So you need basically people like Vivek and Vishal, and we also do some work in that area. But from the analytics perspective, yes, you have great AI labs being set up. So the right hand side of the work, you can really learn very well from that. Right, so reskill the team, 80% of the team at least, because you won't find a lot of already capable people there in the market. And if you will find them, they will be globally distributed. To find even, say, 100 good data scientists all over India would be a very challenging job. And of course, I also kind of, as a part of my initiative, do a little bit of work in this area, where we have more of a data engineering track as of now, which is complementary to the analytics side. And I think choosing which track depends on what you want to do, what interests you, what background you have, what kind of experience you have, so you can do that. And it's really difficult to be learning both of it together. You really need to be superhuman. I only know very few people who can really do both of these very well, and of course they are very well paid. But again, when you're starting up into this field, you need to kind of judicially choose which side you want to be while kind of working on these projects. Okay, then the challenge from the customer perspective is they already have a lot of infrastructure which they have developed over last couple of decades. How do they kind of leverage that? So you don't want to throw all of that away upfront. If you will go in as a consultant and say that, okay, you've spent $10 billion on this infrastructure over last decade. Now give me $2 more billion. I will replace everything with the new infrastructure. They will just show you the door, because that's not how it works in the practical world. Okay, so the current RDBMS technology stack, a little bit of high-level architecture. Anyone on the technology side who have been working in data warehousing in last decade would understand this very well. Is traditionally all our operational distributed market data has been going into traditional data warehouses, and there were data integration tools which were available from, and which are still available from vendors like Oracle, SQL Server, right, Business Object. And the problem is they don't scale. Even to kind of add another variable would take a lot of time in there. So what you can do is you can augment that basically with the newer structures. HDFS is again commoditized, and then you can integrate that with tool like R or Python, and then do queries directly into that. And then additionally, you could also add a NoSQL database and start moving some of that data, newer data into that, and then run your reports from there. Okay. Then another challenge that I see is you don't have the data itself. Again, when you're starting up the project, if you want to kind of make it successful, make sure that you have all the available data upfront. It requires a lot of collaboration between different teams to get all the right set of data. You don't want to miss on any of the data sources just because you didn't had a good kind of understanding with another team which holded some of the key data which was needed for training your models. Okay. So our big data track is available, and Vishal, yes, that's what I had. Open it up for poll or any questions which are there.
Sure. So let's do some poll and understand, however, how our audience is and where are they coming from, etc. So I recommend that you all participate in this so that this is data for us. We are talking about data analytics here, so this is data for us, as well as you'll understand why you may be quiet, and if anything else we can share with you related to these. Please respond in the survey here. Some more to go. So we have about 80% Indians and 10% other parts of the world, Asians to be precise. Okay, thank you. Next would be, how much experience do you have in Hadoop, Spark, NoSQL databases? Some more to respond. So about 80% of you are saying you have up to 2 years, 10% up to 5 years, 2 to 5 years, and 10% more than 5 years. Okay, then I don't know why some of you, like, you are not responding up here. Okay, thank you. So which database have you used for your analytics layer till date? NoSQL like MongoDB, Cassandra? Generally, 40% say generally run from file system. The rest of them say they are still using Oracle or MySQL. Okay. Some more to respond? Okay, that's fine. Thank you. And last one. Which language are you most proficient in? So, okay. Surprisingly, this time we are getting 80% have said Python, 10% Java, 10% JavaScript. Great. What's your feedback, Ashutosh? How has been your experience with the audience otherwise?
I think it's a good mix of audience. Um, I would love to take if there are any questions or feedback or
Okay, great. So, guys, I sincerely suggest you ask some questions. It will be good to get all queries solved here. He's an expert and he has consulted a lot of companies both in India and abroad. So if you have any queries whatsoever in data engineering or big data side, he's the right person to go to. Any questions? This is the first time I'm not getting any question at all. So
yeah, I think last
probably
time we
either
did
they
this.
know everything. Yeah,
Yeah,
last time
last
we
time
got
we
a
did
lot of,
this session. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah. Maybe a lot of people have seen the recording already. So
possibly, right. So
okay, good.
I think we finished pretty fast. It's just 8:28 right now. Okay,
Right,
last time
right. Yeah,
we had more engagement also. A lot of people were responding, so and a lot of questions were there. So probably we finished in about 45-50 minutes. Okay, so Ashutosh, would you like to show your contact details just in case people would like to attend, connect with you?
session already. Yeah, so feel free to kind of write to me on engage with me on the meetup or on Quora or on LinkedIn. I'll be happy to kind of respond.
Okay, so since we are not getting any questions, so another just a minute, we will then end the webinar.
Great. Yeah, thanks, Vishal. Thanks everyone for your time.
Thank you. Thanks. Have a good day to all. Good night to Ashutosh.